All right, so today we're diving into the world of Kenneth Grant and his ideas about the hidden God. We'll be exploring some pretty wild stuff from 5 of his books. Let's see, we've got Against the Light, Aleister Crowley and a Hidden God, Beyond the Mob Zone, Cults of the Shadow, and the Magical Revival.
And to make things even more interesting, we'll also be looking at a couple of critiques: Gamaliel, The Diary of a Vampire, and The Sword of Horus.
Right, because we always want to see what other perspectives are out there. So this hidden God that Grant was so into, it's not your typical, benevolent deity up in the clouds.
Not at all. Grant's talking about a force that's, well, hidden, like operating behind the scenes of reality as we know it. It's a pretty wild idea when you really think about it.
It really is. And it gets even wilder when you see where Grant takes it. He pulls a lot from Egyptian mythology, especially with the god Set. And Set, he's often portrayed as this, evil, chaotic figure, right?
Yeah, but Grant digs deeper. He sees Set as this raw, primal force that embodies those parts of existence that we often try to ignore or repress. He's not afraid to explore the darker, more unsettling aspects of consciousness and the universe.
And this is where Sirius comes in, that dog star, which Grant places at the heart of his whole cosmology.
It's true. Sirius becomes the central point for Grant, this nexus of power and influence that connects to this hidden god concept.
And Against the Light, things get really interesting. Grant introduces this character, the Yellow One, who seems to embody some of these darker, hidden aspects of this force.
It's pretty unsettling stuff. Grant's a master at creating these eerie, suspenseful narratives that really blur the line between reality and nightmare.
And we can't forget about the Book of the Law. That's a big one.
Yeah.
It's like the cornerstone of Philema, which Grant was all about.
Absolutely. Grant takes this key text and instead of just accepting traditional interpretations, he connects it back to this hidden god.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, he comes up with some pretty radical interpretations. He was always pushing the boundaries, even within the world of occultism.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't afraid to shake things up. So it seems like Grant was really interested in taking these existing frameworks, like Egyptian mythology or Thelemic thought, and filtering them through this idea of a hidden god. But how does this hidden force actually manifest? What does it mean for us as individuals? Okay, so we've got this hidden god, this force operating behind the scenes, but how do we even begin to connect with something like that?
Well, that's where this idea of the Scarlet Woman comes in, and it's not as simple as it might seem at first glance.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds pretty provocative, to say the least.
It definitely grabs your attention. But Grant uses the term in a couple of ways. On one hand, it's a real person, a woman who's actively involved in these magical practices. But it's also this powerful symbol, this representation of feminine energy, or Shakti, as he called it.
So it's like she's a person, but she's also this archetype, this embodiment of feminine power.
Exactly. And Grant connects this idea of the Scarlet Woman to Kundalini, that energy, often depicted as a serpent, coiled at the base of the spine.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. It's like this untapped potential within us, right?
Precisely. And Grant believed that certain rituals, some pretty intense, could awaken that energy. We're talking blood magic here.
Intense is an understatement.
Definitely not for the faint of heart. And it's important to remember that even Grant acknowledged the risks involved, especially if these rituals weren't approached with the utmost respect and understanding.
Now, there's a real sense of caution there, even within these unconventional practices.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because the Sword of Horus presents a slightly different take on all of this. While Grant seems to link the Scarlet Woman and these rituals directly to Sirius, the Dog Star, the Sword of Horus, suggests a more inward focus.
Oh, how so?
It frames this awakening, this tapping into power as a more personal transformation, something that happens within each of us, rather than being tied to a specific star or external force.
So it's less about Sirius itself and more about igniting that inner spark, that potential within.
Right. And this idea of inner pathways, hitting doorways within ourselves, actually ties into Grant's concept of the tunnels of Set. Now, we're not talking literal tunnels here.
Okay, good to know. Things are getting a little too sci-fi for me.
Right. These are more like pathways to other dimensions, other states of consciousness, each governed by its own set of rules.
So how do you find these tunnels? Are there maps? Asking for a friend.
Well, Grant was big on numerology, specifically gematria, where you assign numerical values to letters to uncover hidden meanings.
Right, like some kind of cosmic code breaking.
Exactly. He believed these words and numbers held the key to unlocking these tunnels. He even described some of the entities he believed inhabited these realms, like Obi from the Ninth Arch.
Obi-Bish. That sounds Interesting.
Grant describes it as a kind of spider-like intelligence, this being of pure information that exists within these tunnels. Then there's Aram, this Pythoness figure.
Oh, right. I remember Aram, like a bridge between worlds almost.
Teh.
It's wild how he combines all these elements, mythology, numerology, these vivid descriptions.
He creates this really complex, layered system. But it's not just words and numbers. Grant also believed that symbols, especially sexual ones, held a lot of power.
Oh, how so?
He saw them as keys to unlocking those tunnels. But of course, not everyone agreed with his approach. The Sword of Horus, for example, criticizes his heavy reliance on gematria.
Questions whether he might have been reading too much into things.
Yeah. And it even suggests that he might have leaned a little too heavily on other authors' fiction in forming some of his ideas. Which is interesting, right? Because in this world of occultism, where do you draw the line between reality and imagination?
That's a great question. So we've been through a lot. This hidden god, the Scarlet Woman, these tunnels of Set. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. And with all this talk of hidden forces and other dimensions, it's easy to get swept up in the excitement of it all. But one of our sources offers a really important counterpoint here.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
Gamaliel, The Diary of a Vampire. It basically serves as this cautionary tale, suggesting that messing around with these occult forces, especially something as powerful as the hidden god, can have serious consequences if you don't know what you're doing.
So it's not all sunshine and roses then.
Definitely not. It's like you wouldn't go exploring a dangerous jungle without a guide, right? This stuff is powerful and it needs to be approached with respect and awareness.
Right, right. So where does this leave us? I mean, we've covered so much ground. What's the takeaway from all of this?
Well, I think Grant is ultimately saying that there's more to reality than we can see or even imagine. He challenges us to question our assumptions about consciousness, the universe. He's saying, hey, maybe there are these hidden forces, these untapped potentials within us, these other realms out there waiting to be discovered.
And while those critiques we discussed raise some valid points about his methods, they also underline how important it is to think critically and do your own research.
Absolutely. It's about engaging with these ideas, not just accepting them at face value. And ultimately, it's about recognizing that the journey of exploration is just as important as the destination, especially in the occult.
Definitely. So, if this hidden God really does represent these unexplored parts of ourselves and these tunnels of Set are like pathways to that hidden knowledge, then what are the limits of human potential? It's a question worth pondering. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of Kenneth Grant. We hope this has given you plenty to think about and maybe even inspired you to do some exploring of your own. Until next time.